Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jaden Irwin, and today we're going to be going through part 2 of the Astro Crash Course that I did, which is the last video that I released, covering the basics of Astro and how to do, the essentials, loading up layout components, creating a new component. This one we're going to be covering a little bit more, and actually one of my favorite features where you can use multiple components, multiple UI frameworks, all inside of an Astro file, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and get started. We're really going to be picking up exactly where we left off in the last video. You'll see we have our home page with a link in it to the Astro main page, their website, and then we have our links. We had our contact page created, and then I've added a little bit here to kind of point us in the right direction of what we're going to go over. But the first thing I want to cover is images. So I briefly covered this in the last video, where the public directory is where you could put images or static files that don't really need to be touched by Astro in the build process. If you're just going to load in some static images, or like documents, PDFs, those types of things, that would be a good place to put it. And to do that, it's really simple inside Astro. I briefly mentioned how to do it, but let's go ahead and cover what that actually looks like here. So we do an image tag, just like you'd expect in HTML. Remember, Astro, you are writing HTML inside of an Astro file. There's nothing really super particular about what goes inside of that for the HTML side. And then this image tag, the source is going to be /images, and our image is called John Fowler. Just pulled it off of Unsplash. And it's loading up our image, but it's gigantic, so let's make that a little bit smaller. All right, and our width of 300 pixels. Perfect. So that is an image loading from the public directory. And the reason I did this first / is anything at that /, it's all going to be from that public directory. So this is images, the directory, and then our image name. So you could put something else in there under the public directory, like documents or PDFs or whatever. So it would be / documents, whatever that might be. I could even put in the robots.txt file as a link if I wanted to throw in that public directory. You wouldn't want to do that, but you kind of get the idea that the public directory is a great spot for your documents, files, things that you statically want to serve. Perfect. So that covers the image from the public directory, but what if you want to put your images in the source directory? That is pretty easy. It's similar to this, but slightly different. So we're going to do a separate image. We're going to do source again, but this one's going to be different. It'll be curly brackets. And then we're going to load in this astro.resolve function. And we'll do quotes because we're going to pass in the string of the path of how to get to that image. So this is relative to wherever you are currently at. We're on index.astro, so we're going to go up 1 to images, and we're going to load in this Will Stewart. I'm going to go ahead and copy the relative path there. Let's do our quotes. Place that. We'll close our tag. Again, gigantic. Let's make it a little bit smaller with 300 pixels. And there is our second image, and that's the image loading from images. The reason why you have to do this astro.resolve is you're helping Astro understand during that build process how to get to that image in your source files. And you'll use this a couple of different ways, or for a couple of different things, not just images. You can also use it for things like JavaScript files or script tags. So you do script, and then the source of that script would be astro.resolve, which we'll cover that a little bit later. But the next thing I want to cover is components. So let's go ahead and copy our contact.astro page, and we're going to rename that to components.astro. Perfect. And let's rename our title here. And I already have the link to our components page. There we go. We're loading the components page right there. And we'll get rid of this p tag. Perfect. So if you already noticed, or maybe looked ahead a little bit, there's this components directory where I have these special buttons, and you'll see that there's a Svelte component and there's a React component, and in normal circumstances you wouldn't be able to use those together very easily. In Astro's case, it's super simple. So let's go ahead. I'll briefly mention what's inside of this too, just to kind of show you. We have our special button React component, and all it does when they click on the button is it uses the JavaScript alert to alert the user that it was clicked on, which just kind of proves that JavaScript is loading in the browser. That's an easy way to show that. So let's go ahead and do an import first. We're going to do import special button from our special buttons React component, and we're going to pass in the child of it, which would be like the label of the button. Click me. And Astro has this really cool feature where you can decide, I think they call it partial hydration, and this lets you decide how that component loads. So if I just left this out, this client load, I should see the button show up, but you'll notice that it doesn't do anything. And the reason it's not doing anything is that JavaScript function isn't loading. It's not doing the alert because there's no JavaScript being passed through for Astro to load it. What's cool about that though is if you didn't need to have any function or JavaScript in this React component, let's just say you like writing in React. Well, Astro makes that super easy. You could write your components in React with React styles and whatever you want to use, and it will just render on this front end as a static, component. But what if you want JavaScript? Well, that's where that client load that you saw comes in. So do client load. And now if I click on it, there you go. There's our JavaScript alert that says you clicked me. So that is how you can load it. And there's other options here too. I would recommend going through the docs.astro webpage. Definitely look through the docs site. There's other ones like client visible, which will only load the JavaScript aspect of this component when it's visible to the client. And there's other options too. I think you can do it based off of media queries, which is really awesome. So maybe you want the JavaScript to only load at a desktop size or something. Super easy. So actually let's leave client load. But that's a React component. What about the Astro component? So we'll do import. It's also called special button. It might not like that. We might have to rename it, but let's see. Yeah, so same component name. Let's call this, we'll rename the file special button 2. That should work. And same idea, we're going to do click me. And we should see another button. Invalid JSX. What is it complaining about here? All right. After some quick troubleshooting, it actually brought up a good point. What I forgot to do is add the Svelte renderer to Astro. So good learning opportunity. In order for Astro to understand these different frameworks through the server side, where you can do this like client load, client visible, the partial hydration, you have to have a renderer for it. So I already had this renderer React installed inside my package.json. And then I also, I forgot to include the Svelte one. So I just went ahead and installed that really quick, and it's working great. If we go to our astro.config.mjs, there is the Astro.js renderer Svelte. And just added that, installed it, and then added that. And now it is loading just as we'd expect, just like the React one was. You'll notice that click me to, that's the Svelte component. And I haven't done that client load tag quite yet, so let's go ahead and do that. And if we go back here, there you go. We have our alert. So both of those are loading JavaScript. We're using a React component and a Svelte component all inside of the same file, which is awesome. So super cool that you can just use these different frameworks, and as they add more renderers, I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless. You just add a new renderer for Astro and you can use that framework within your files wherever you want to. You know, the idea is, though, ship the least amount of JavaScript that you need to keep that page loading fast for your end user. But this makes it super easy to decide when and where and what JavaScript you want to load on that front end page. So super cool. The last one I'll show is actually through the script tag. This is a lit component. Same thing, you know, runs the special function of the you clicked me alert. But this one I'm going to load through a script tag. And the main reason for that is partially to show what script tags would look like in Astro. But also I want to show, you know, you can load these web components through lit very easily through a script tag like you'd expect. Put that type equals module, and it will efficiently load on your front end page. Lit is working on SSR. It's kind of in an experimental phase, I would say. I ran into some issues trying to run it this same way, this client load way, with other things that Astro offers. It's kind of having issues with, but it is early days for lit to be ran in an SSR context like this, in a server-side render context. So the easiest way to get around that would really to just go ahead and load a script tag. And this is where you're going to notice that astro.resolve again. So I'll just do the astro.resolve, pass in the path to our special -button.ts, which is our lit package. And what is that? We're going to go up one to component, and then special buttons. .ts, and they do recommend using the absolute name of the file. That is in order for Vite, what's happening under the hood of Astro, to understand exactly which file you're loading. It will do the conversion of TypeScript to JavaScript for you. But now that we have that script tag loaded, we should be able to use our lit component. Perfect. And then I believe it's also a slot, so we'll just do click me 3. And let's see what issue we're running into here. Script type equals module. Let's go ahead and inspect the page real quick. We'll just do some live debugging here. Special -button. That is the name of our tag. Did I miss? Oh, there it is right there. Special buttons is the name of that. So, you know, some live debugging there. It happens, missing the file name when you're manually typing it out like that. But yeah, there we go. We have our click me 3. You can click on that and it loads JavaScript. So, yeah, really cool. We have a React component, a Svelte component, and a lit component all loading on the same page, which is a good thing. And, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. I won't, you know, be too cliche there, but yeah, try to use the least amount of JavaScript you can. So that is it for the components. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. The next one that I wanted to cover is blog posts. So you might be wondering, once you get started with the images and the text and loading everything on page, you're like, okay, now I want to write some blog posts with this website that I'm creating. So that's actually super easy to do with Astro, mainly because of their awesome support, you know, right from the bat for markdown files. So if we go to pages and then blog, I already dropped in a lorem ipsum blog post. It's very straightforward. This post-1.md, that is actually a markdown file in our pages directory. And we have a setup tag, or a setup. This is called front matter inside of the fences. You know, we've covered that before. Astro uses a similar setup with the fences at the top. Setup, and then we're importing a layout. So this is where you would go and import the layout component for your blog post. What we want to do is probably create a specific blog post layout though. So let's go ahead and do that. Little pro tip here for VS Code. Control-Shift-L will look for any other instances of the same exact text that you have highlighted. So this is going to be blog post layout. And then title, we're going to have example blog, description, date, author, and then underneath that bottom fence is all of the content. And it's really just got an image here, /images. There's the image public from the public directory, the alt text for that image. But let's just make sure it's loading. So we did create a new layout though, so blog post layout. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that one. Blog post layout. Perfect. And then this is going to be base head, all of that's the same. Let's go ahead and make sure it's loading though. So we're going to do /blog /post-1. And there you go. It's loading it on page, but you might notice, oh, this doesn't look very good. This is just a blog post that it literally just took the markdown and put it on page. Well, you do have control of the styles because of that layout component. So blog post layout, let's do a style tag in the head, because we already have a head tag in here. And let's start with targeting this image, because it looks like, well, this image is more than 100% of the width of the page. So to target that, we're going to say any image inside of the slot, and to do that we need a global selector. So this global would be anything that's slotted basically on this layout component. And we're going to target the image tag. Let's do global, and this will be max width 100%, height auto, oh, not max width, width 100%. So after a little bit of troubleshooting, I found where my issue was with these basic markdown files for blog post. It actually prefers your import to be called layout from the layout. Just one of those little things that you can miss. So in some circumstances, if you have this set up a little bit differently, you could import this and not call it layout, but because of the way we have this markdown running, it's just looking for something called layout in order to assign that as the layout for this markdown file. So that's all we had to do. I'll go back. Our blog post layout looks the same. I'll remove that SCSS tag there because this is just CSS. And then import layout from still the blog post layout. But yeah, you'll see if we go back to our page here, it's loading that width of the image. And we could do even more. We could go back to our blog post layout and say width equals 200 pixels if we want. And it makes that image small. So what you could do is you could wrap this with a main tag most likely, or you could also switch that to an article if you want. Probably what I would recommend for your blog posts. And then you could do article, and then you could target that article, right? Inside your style tag, you could put a max width on that article of, 900 or 860 pixels, kind of a good one. Margin 0 auto. And there you go. You already have something that looks more like a long form blog post. So that's really all I'm going to go through right now. But yeah, we have our image targeting through that global tag. So any image inside of whatever's slotted through, which would be your blog content. You could target anchor links. You could target really anything, any HTML through that. And then we have our article tag with a pretty basic centered layout. So that's it for the blog posts, creating a blog post layout, all of that. Feel free to play around with the blog post styles too if you end up creating a blog off of this. The last one I wanted to show is a really cool feature Astro has where you can go and get all of these links, and you could kind of create a blog page that lists all of your blog posts. And this one's going to be a little bit more in depth than our other, quick tutorials that we've done. But let's go ahead and create a new page under blog, and we're going to call it, it's going to look weird for a sec, square brackets, page. If you're not used to next, it's going to look weird, I should say. So square brackets page and then .astro. Think of anything inside of this square bracket like a variable. So we're going to, pass the page into this file. And you'll see a little bit what I mean here in a second. So let's do the fences again on our Astro file. Let's start with, we might be able to actually go into our, let's do something a little bit more basic. Our contact, and let's just copy and paste all of that. We'll call this the blog page, or just blog is fine. And then under the import, we're going to do an export async for an asynchronous function. And this is going to be get static paths. We're going to pass in something called a paginate into that function. It's a built-in pagination function that Astro has. And I'm going to cheat a little bit on this just so we don't have to go through all the boilerplate. But we're going to do const all posts equals astro.fetchContent. FetchContent is a function Astro has built in again where it can do just that. It can go fetch content of wherever you tell it to. So we're going to fetch the markdown files. So right now we only have one post, but you could imagine maybe you write 100 blog posts here, right? We're going to go and get all of the .md files in the same directory, right? Because we have this blog page. So anything with the .md at the end. Perfect. The next one, I'm just going to copy this line and I'll explain it a little bit. So sorted posts, we're getting all of those posts and we're sorting them based on their date. So kind of, going backwards on the date range, right? And then we're going to return, this function will return the paginate that we passed in, sorted posts, and then it also wants a page size. So what is the size of our pages? Let's just do a big number for now, 100. Because right now it's just going to load as links. So let's go ahead down here, we'll delete that. And let's map over our, and one more thing. Under this const, we're going to do const page. And that is an object equals astro.props. You've seen that astro.props before too. So then we're going to do page.data. So the data of the page that's being passed through here. .map. And we're going to map over every post. So post. And let's just do parentheses here. You don't have to use all the parentheses that I'm using. I feel like some of the syntax makes it a little bit easier to read for people when you get that syntax highlighting in there. And we're going to pass the href through. So the href is actually going to be the post, right? So for each post, we want a URL. Sorry if you hear my dog in the background there. He's my coding buddy. And we're going to do post.title inside of that href. So what we should see on the blog page is a link to the title, well, through the title, to that post-1 page. And so if we go back to just /blog, Oh, and it is going to complain because we are down one step further. So there's our blog page, and then a link to our example blog post. Click on that, and you're loading the blog post. So if I go and let's just do this for example's sake, let's do a post-2. And we will rename that to post-2. Perfect. And let's call this example blog post number 2. Doesn't like the number there. There's probably a way to escape that, but yeah. So example blog post 2. Click on that, and there we have post-2. So really cool feature, and not a lot of code, to be honest. There's other frameworks out there that make this much more difficult to do. I'll go back to our page here, but yeah, Astro's made it so easy to just go and fetch the content of wherever you tell it to, and then it will grab that content, and you can map over it, you can get links to it, whatever you need to do for blog posts or categories on the blog post. If you wanted to start putting tags inside of your blog post, that makes that super easy with get static paths. It's a really cool framework. I hope these crash courses, or this second part of the crash course, has been helpful. That's all I really had for you today. Yeah, if you have any questions, definitely leave a comment below. I hope that covers the bases, though, of like, I want to get started in Astro, but I want to understand how to do the basic things that you want any of these frameworks to do for you. So again, hope you guys have a good one, and see you in the next one. Peace.